Hi everyone and welcome back to the fantasyfootballfix.com YouTube channel with me, Tom Campbell, for another Meet the Elite team reveal. And I'm super excited to say we are welcoming back Corey Baker. He has had an interesting run, shall we say, since the last time we spoke. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Corey, welcome back to the channel, my friend. I've given you a bit of an introduction there. Let's get you onto that soapbox straight away. You were last on the channel before the World Cup. Things were going brilliantly. Talk to me about how the season's been going since approximately game week 17, man.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. You have the silhouette of, I think, Conte, because this season's kind of going like mine. Last time we talked, I had a pretty good week. I was in around 90,000, and since then, it's been a string of bad luck and bad decisions that I've had. I don't think in fact, I certainly have never had this kind of run of red arrows in consecutive game weeks. So it's been challenging. Hopefully I can turn it around, but certainly I'm not at all where I want to be.
No, it's interesting, Corey, right? Because you guys are the elite managers who are looking at on screen at the moment. Your best ever finish in the top 1K, top 5K finishes, top 10K finishes. Amazing record, right? But no one's immune to having a tough run, right? We're still only 21 game weeks in. There's still loads of football left. To someone like you who's had this great run, and for people watching, how do you react to that right now? Is it kind of, do you just trust the process and you still trust what has brought you success, or do you deviate from what you've done previously? How do you react to that?
Well, first I react with a lot of expletives and profanities, and then I will, usually if it's a short, the game has a lot of variance in it. I don't really like the term variance. I prefer luck, because it really is just, it's up to luck. The sport of football is one of the great things about it is that it really, it's so difficult to score, and there's such unique events that fortune comes into play so often. And obviously that's going to impact a game that's based upon football. And so, trust the process, but I certainly have done some introspection. I've looked at the results. I'm a big believer in underlying data, so expected data, and I've looked at the expected data of my team, and I have been somewhat hardened that the expected data is actually solid. It's actually good. I've just had some bad stuff. I think the to sum up my season, or at least the last few game weeks, is the Mitrovic penalty that he kicked off his standing leg.
His own foot, yeah.
So I obviously had him, but so not only did I have him, and that was the third missed penalty in a row that I had.
Gosh, ouch.
But a lot of other people had multiple Newcastle defenders. I mean, everyone's got Trippier for the most part. But, Botman, even Byrne, and then Pope were highly honed. So you've got this double whammy, and that's just kind of been the way it's gone. It's just been one of those years, and it seems like anything that could go wrong has.
For this period, right? I mean, the season's, the story's not written yet, is it? There's still lots to go, isn't there? And
absolutely.
So if I'm reading what you're saying correctly, then Corey, you're looking at the results, it's telling a crap story. But if you're looking at the process that underlined that, then there's nothing you would kind of think. You were talking off camera just before we started recording about two individuals. Do you want to share for the viewers how you can make these decisions, and then certain things can go against you? I think that contextualizes things really well.
Yeah, I mean, my whole season you can pinpoint to like 6 different decisions I've made, and the difference is literally like 120 points if you add them all up. But I think there's two players who kind of have shown the struggles I've had. And one is Harry Kane, who I've owned Harry Kane for 11 weeks, and I haven't owned him for 10 weeks. Right. So pretty much 50-50. The 11 weeks I've owned him, he's scored something like 30% fewer goals and assists than his underlying data would suggest, which is not good. That's basically what Nunez is doing, and everyone's calling him Andy Carroll, which is ridiculous. But no, that's another story. But the 10 weeks I haven't owned him, he's outscored those numbers by 50%.
Wow.
And so if you just had them both be equal, it would be like a 30-point swing towards me, right?
Huge.
And so, and then Luke Shaw, which is just, it's a traumatic story for me. I'm still not quite over it. Diego Dallo was one of the first players on my team coming out of the World Cup.
Sure.
I loved his attacking numbers were a little better than Shaw's, but his bonus numbers were insane. They were like Trippier. Anytime if they were going to have a clean sheet and 1 goal, he was going to be in the bonus. Yeah. No questions asked. And then he pulls his hamstring. We don't really get a lot of notes on how good he's going to be. And I really thought about Luke Shaw. I really, really did. Didn't take him. So obviously he scores his 1 goal every 4 years.
Yeah.
And got 7 bonus points in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I picked him up for the upcoming doubles. And in those 3 games, he's had 4 points. And if you look at the underlying shot data, the chances of United getting 3 clean sheets and then having 0 clean sheets in the next 3, because besides their Arsenal game, even the City really didn't create much.
No.
It was like a 2% chance it would actually happen the way it did. So that happens. Those are the things. I think people struggle with percentages.
Yeah.
Thinking like 2% never happens, but it does.
It
happens
does.
1 every 50 times.
Sure.
And that's not that insignificant, right? So it's just been one of those years.
It has, but like I say, the year's not complete yet. And like we work for Fantasy Football Fix is in the business of predictive modeling, and that's what we're trying to do, and that's what the algorithm is so good at. But at the end of the day, you are still trying to predict the future, which is difficult. Yeah. Look, guys, what we're going to do today on the video, we're going to take a look at the team that Corey is shaping up to sort of try and write this season a little bit as we approach Game Week 22. We're recording on Sunday night, so still a fair way away from the start of Game Week 22 with the first game of that game week on Friday night. We're going to take a look at that team, and then we're going to take a little look at some of the Arsenal attacking assets. So let's take a look at how Corey's team is potentially shaping up for Game Week 22. So I've decided to grey these out, Corey. So we're going to go one by one. Let's start at with the goalkeepers first of all. You've still got Ederson in goal for the away match at Spurs. In terms of how Man City look defensively, obviously they've just picked up the John Stones injury. We don't yet know a little bit too much about that, I should say, right now. How are you seeing them as a collective? Do you think there's still value in Ederson as the most sort of shored way into that back line?
Well, I picked up Ederson 2 weeks ago. For Kepa because of the 2 double game weeks and the better schedule.
Dan said the same when we spoke to him. Yeah.
And as my year has been, Kepa's outscored him by I think 14 points. But City, he's not at all of value, but I was getting an extra 2 games and his fixtures are great. So I certainly have no need to change him. I'm sure I'll keep him until my wild card, which will be nearish 30 or so, depending on how all the blank and double game weeks shape out later. But for now, he's there. And as far as City's defense, I don't think they look good at all.
No.
I've been down on City for a long time.
You have? Yeah. Talk to us about that. What have you seen?
So obviously Pep knows more about the sport than any of us who are going to be paying attention to fantasy soccer fantasy football, or anything. But there's something going on. For some reason, he hasn't liked the control he had he's tried to change the chain for Holland. Didn't like the control. His Foden's done something that's killed him, and now you've got Lucas in there who's a great young prospect, but in general, they just don't seem to have the control they've had in the last few years. No. I think he's trying to gain it, but it's just they're not the same.
No, and feels transitional, doesn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. So, they're still very, very good. No question about that. But the prices you're paying are very, very high. Sure. So I don't see a scenario in which I have City defenders after this Ederson period. Again.
Okay. Well, you mentioned defenders. Let's take a look at the 3 that you're lining up there. We've already talked a little bit about Luke Shaw. I wonder if he's going to repay you. Now that we've got the double game week 22 confirmed, He has been sick, hasn't he, Corey, for the last few weeks, or few days, I should say, and missed a couple of cup fixtures there. You're aligning him with Lewis Dunk, goal scorer in the FA Cup just gone, and Trippier pretty ubiquitous. How's that back three? You've got Cucurella on the bench as well, and Bueno a bit further down. But in terms of that back three, talk us through your choices there. And Trippier maybe less so, as we don't need to belabor that point.
Right. Yeah, everyone's got Trippier. I'm not happy with Dunk. I took him in wild card for a couple reasons. One, at the time I had Almiron and Trippier, and I was considering potentially a triple up somewhere, and I didn't go with Botman, which I probably should have. But I was also the potential for Brighton game weeks, double game weeks were put out there, and that's been a thorn in my side, is trying to predict double game weeks when we don't know the schedule, and they didn't come to fruition. And quite frankly, Brighton looks great, but they look great in an attacking sense. Their defense has not been very good recently, so not really happy with that. His goal today now means I've either got to take a hit or play with 10 and 25. So even when he does something right, he's still hurting me.
Oh God, Corey.
So I could play Cucurella. I don't know. I'll almost certainly stick with Dunk. I mean, Bournemouth are terrible. So
they're not. The only slight hope they have, isn't it? They're comparatively defensively more sound, aren't they? As an attacking force, they really offer precious little, don't they? So you'd have hope there. Yeah. Luke Shaw, you've mentioned the double there. Let's hope he's back to fitness for owners, and it feels like you're owed that. Anyway, let's take a look at this midfield of yours, Corey, that you've assembled. A bit of a red theme there. I'm going to ask you not to talk too much about the Arsenal guys there in terms of Martinelli and Odegaard, because we're actually going to talk about them and some other of the attacking guys on the next slide, guys. So we'll just hold fire on that. You've got the captaincy on Marcus Rashford, and Bruno Fernandes is joining him as the vice captain. Any thoughts on whether or not that might flip, or are you happy with that setup?
No, I can't see it. Even I think Eriksen getting hurt is good for Fernandes, because I don't know if people have paid attention, but he has not been on any set pieces. Very, very few. Eriksen's pretty much monopolized the right-footed set pieces for them, so that'll give him some more.
It's a great shout.
Opportunity.
Yeah, people wouldn't have thought about that. I wouldn't have thought.
Well, the other thing about being on set pieces, one of the reasons why Trippier is so good is that if you create a chance, you not only get the underlying bonus for the created chance, but you also get a successful cross. So players who are on set pieces can really rack up the underlying bonus points. So that definitely cements me taking Bruno, which it'll end up being a hit, but it's going to be worth it in my opinion. But no, I mean, Rashford just looks fantastic. So I don't see how, with his goal threat, Fernandes still doesn't have much goal threat. So I think you've got to stick with Rashford from a captaincy perspective.
Do you think there's a Anthony Martial, as far as we know? Eric Ten Hag doesn't tend to give away too much in his press conferences, as you alluded to. But let's assume Anthony Martial is out for at least one of the two in the double, rendering him less effective. Do you think Bruno Fernandes picks up the penalties in his absence?
I don't. Who knows? I mean, Rashford's a fairly good penalty taker, right? He's taken some big ones in the past for them. He has, specifically PSG in the Champions League. So who knows? I think we'll have to see. I put my money on Fernandes taking it, but I wouldn't be surprised if Rashford did.
I guess if we knew that might be a factor that would influence people. Let's just talk a little bit about how you'd get here. Obviously, we're seeing this is transfers you're intending to make, Corey, if everything stays the same in terms of fitness and other injuries in the week that's coming up. How have you got to this composition of four in midfield? Who's made way?
Yeah, so I have Almiron and Salah at the moment instead of Odegaard and Fernandes. And given the schedules in double game week, Salah just isn't a viable option right now. I don't think. No. I mean, for the money, he's still adequate, but it's just for the money. There's no reason. And then Almiron, I've been wanting Odegaard for a very, very long time. We'll talk about that in a bit, but I was triple R for much of the season. That didn't include Odegaard, but I've been wanting him for a while, so I'm happy to be able to bring him.
Makes just total sense. Yeah,
he's a phenomenal player, and he's getting a lot of touches in scoring positions. So I was a little surprised. I thought he might do a little better, but he's been really they fundamentally changed the way he plays, and he's in the box quite a bit now. So
Yeah.
Adding in the set pieces that he does take, he doesn't take corners, but he takes the other set pieces a lot. And then is involved in everything. So he's a phenomenal.
He's a
player.
great pick. You know, Craig, who we had on a couple of weeks ago, was saying the same, and he would have been his standout pick of all of the Arsenal assets. It'll be interesting to see whether or not you go quite that far when we come on to the next slide. But let's take a look at the forwards here. Haaland, pretty straightforward pick there. I don't need to talk about him too much. You've talked about Kane already, and Nketiah as well, joining or making up that three. That kind of setup, Corey, with having Nketiah there as that kind of nicely priced forward to supplement those. Gosh, it helps, doesn't it, to have someone whilst Jesus is recovering, and he looks good, right? Looks the real deal.
Oh yeah, I mean he. I had him at the end last year, and I thought he played great. His finishing is yet to be proven. Mm-hmm. He's kind of like Jesus, where he seems like he's maybe a little underperforms his finishing, but he's always there. He's always in the box. He's always getting on the end of things. And at his price point, he's worth probably $8.5-9 million.
Yeah,
I would think. And you're getting him for $2 million less than that. Yeah. Given their schedule, I don't see a viable path to not having 3 Arsenals. So I know we're going to talk about that in a bit.
Yeah,
so,
we are.
Nketiah is one of the first ones for me.
Sure. And I guess the value, and we've talked previously on shows about the value of players for this season. The budget really isn't constrained. You're sitting here with 2.7 million in the bank after having made those transfers, right? So I mean, it feels like it's pretty straightforward to get to a team like this. It's just different from seasons gone past.
Yeah, one of the things I think I have fully embraced now is what I call the old school defense. Right, is you have one or two stalwarts. Like Trippier is obviously not going anywhere, and he's going to be in most people's team. And then maybe you rotate the other 4. Like there's just not a lot of value in defense this year. There has been the previous few years, namely because Liverpool, City, and Chelsea's defenders just have either been hurt or bad, and so or rotated. So you find yourself with a bunch of $4.5-5 million defenders, and that frees up a lot of budget for quality players. Right.
Yeah. What about Kane's long-term prospects in this team of yours, Corey? You mentioned the 50-50 split and how you've been on the wrong side of some pretty tough luck there. How do you feel about his prospects of staying in the team? What would you be saying to the viewers in relation to Harry Kane?
Yeah, one of the I talked earlier, like the fundamental decisions that have decided my season is coming out of the World Cup. I strongly considered a 3 premium forward with Darwin, Kane, and Haaland, and dumping Cancelo. At the time, Cancelo was nailed. But I really thought about it. Didn't do it. Obviously, that would have been much different. But I mean, Kane's having a fantastic year.
He is.
If you like Haaland, I know is kind of taking the press, but if it weren't for that, you'd be looking at Kane having one of a year like he did when he was like 25, and so. He is expensive, and the Spurs in general look like crap.
Yeah, they do.
So I'm sure there's going to be some times when I consider it. In addition, they're going to come back with the UCL, so their schedule is going to get a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
And a lot more impacted. But for now, he's
there to stay. Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Just one final question on the team before we look at those Arsenal players, Corey. You're sitting here with money in the bank. I guess that gives you a bit of a slush fund if you did want to go back to De Bruyne or another premium. But my question is more about the budget there. You've got Andreas Pereira, who's been a stalwart, hasn't he, for people at the low end of their midfield there. Any thoughts to turn him into one of the Brighton midfielders?
I mean, if double game weeks come up, I could possibly do that. But if I'm doing that, then I really need to dump one of the forwards. I don't want to get in a scenario where I have 8 attackers and have to bench one, and I'm certain that I will make a mistake on that quite a bit. So I really don't like those setups. I've had them in the past, and they become very frustrating because inevitably you bench the guy who scores and what have you. So I probably won't go that route unless double game weeks push me there, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I do think Pereira, he's still fine as an asset.
Sure.
At that price point, I prefer Bailey now.
Yeah.
I mean, Bailey looks nailed. Emery's done a great job with them. I think they're kind of going under the radar, how well the team in general is playing. So I prefer Bailey now.
Okay. That's interesting.
Pereira also is getting a little bit. I feel like Pereira is actually becoming a little bit of a minutes threat. Willian seems to have is nailed now, and then Pereira seems to get hooked quite early, quite a bit. So
interesting. I mean,
I certainly won't burn a transfer on that unless double game
doubles.
Weeks
So, some interesting observations strategically about having that 8 attacking options and that headache is something you'd macro level avoid. Find that really interesting on the Emery. Let's just talk quickly about Aston Villa, because you did say in the prep for this that defensively you think that they may be one that we're sleeping on a little bit. Anyone in particular standing out to you?
So as you know, this group, the elite group, we have a Slack channel, and I've been talking up the England international Tyrone Mings.
What a man. Yeah.
He does have, I think it's 1 cap. But I mean, Villa, since Emery's been there, has been top 10 in underlying data, and they have a great schedule coming up. So I actually have planned a dunk swap for Mings in a couple weeks.
And that is what we get you here for. It's the Lewis Dunk to Tyrone Mings transfer.
The big stuff, right?
Yeah. Look, I'm messing around, but actually Emery, historically is a guy who is very cautious and very sets his teams up super solid and hard to break down. So hey, there might be some value there. You've mentioned the lack of option or lack of value back in the defence. So who knows? Maybe that's a route to go down. Corey, we've threatened this Arsenal analysis long enough. Let's hop on and take a look at some statistics for some of the Arsenal attacking assets, and you can give us your thoughts. So guys, lots of numbers on screens here, but you can see that we've pulled out some information looking at sort of the most recent data for the likes of Saka, Nketiah, Martinelli and Odegaard, who we've already mentioned. And I think based on what Craig said, based on what Dan said, Mark, etc. and Corey now, the advice seems to be is to get on these Arsenal assets, guys, and load your teams up with them if we can. Corey, I'm going to give you the floor on this one. You've opted for your 3 there in terms of having the Martinelli, Odegaard and Nketiah treble up. Is that your ideal setup, or is that because of Martinelli being a legacy pick? How would you set up? How would you be recommending guys if they were on, say, a wild card for the Arsenal attacking assets?
Yeah, so I've had Martinelli's the only player. Martinelli and Pereira are the 2 players who've been in my team the entire time.
Okay.
So I've had him from the get-go. Saka is a better asset than Martinelli, especially with Trossard coming in. That probably puts a little stress on Martinelli's game time.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot, but I think he'll get, just like last game. I think he got yanked at 67 before he's playing 90 every game. So, but for the price point, especially for my price point, I don't see the value in upgrading to Saka. Saka's doesn't really get in the box much. He's been doing a great job with his finishing. He's still on penalties, and he does take the left-sided corners, but he's not any better than Martinelli in my opinion. Okay. So I think those 2 are toss-ups, and if you have the money, sure, go with Saka, but if you don't, Martinelli's just fine.
Okay, interesting.
Odegaard Odegaard's what we talked about. Odegaard's just he's a joy to watch.
Yeah, isn't he? Beautiful player. Yeah.
Right, and so, but his underlying, he's just involved in everything, and his bonus numbers are really, really, really good. Yeah. So, I think Odegaard's the best of value long term. Yeah. I think Nketiah is the best value short term, but Jesus is going back at some point. We don't know exactly when, but probably in 28, 29, 30, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
But even then, I think Nketiah is just, again, if you look at his numbers, you've got his expected goals, but his shot numbers are just obscene. Yeah. So they're always in threatening positions. He's not taking pot shots from 30 yards. Yeah. He's within the 10-yard box.
I mean, he's playing in a great team, Corey, isn't he? I mean, they're seriously impressive team, aren't they? Very good. Yeah. And he's leading the line there, and a great value. I mean, the numbers that are leaping out to me as a stats guy, the expected FPL points there. I mean, the number for Nketiah there over the season is dwarfing some wonderful players. So that kind of justifies that in itself. And you mentioned bonus points as well. An avenue I think certain managers can sleep on, not the elite guys like yourself, but for Odegaard to be averaging more than a bonus point per game or per 90, I should say,
obscene.
over the season is obscene, isn't it? It really is impressive. Yeah. I mean, so you're saying for the people with Martinelli, hold fire and just keep that. It's going to be.
I mean, it depends, right? It depends on when you bought them.
Mm-hmm.
If you have the money and you have the free transfers, an upgrade to Saka, I do think it's an upgrade, but I don't think it's as big an upgrade as Odegaard and Nketiah are for their comparative. So I have no problem sticking with Martinelli. I would suspect on my wild card, whenever that is, I won't have him anymore. Yeah. But to burn a transfer for me, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, I don't think.
Understood, man. Understood. So we've focused in on the attacking assets here. That's how you've set your team up. Talk to me quickly about them defensively as an option. Let's say again on a wild card, would you be looking to the likes of Ben White or somewhere else, or are you just saying, you know what, the value's in the attack?
I mean, the defense is fantastic too. So if we didn't have a limit, I think we'd all be walking around with 6 or 7 Arsenal players, right? So, in the end, I decided that I thought I could get by with the Trippier being the stalwart, and then rotation. Trippier and Shaw most likely for a while, and then rotation in the other spot. So I thought that the difference in upgrading to an Arsenal defender like Gabriel would probably be the one I go with, who's always been great for me. I thought that difference wasn't nearly as much as Odegaard or Nketiah.
Sure.
So I just went that. But there's nothing wrong. I mean, they're the best defensive picks besides Trippier in the game too. So it's like, which one do you want to go with?
Yeah.
So for me, I feel like the difference in their defense, the other defense, is not as big as the difference between Odegaard, Nketiah, and the options you'd have there.
Beautifully summed up, and I think that's it, isn't it? You can find equivalent value elsewhere defensively in FPL. Looking at other teams, I'm not sure you can when you look at the attacking assets and the price points that we've got on screen right now. I think that sums it up really nicely. Look, Corey, last time we spoke, I think I've managed to completely derail your season by having a conversation with you. So I really hope that this conversation resets things and you get back climbing up that ladder. Anything else you wanted to bring up to the viewers in relation to your coming season? One question I did say is, I did want to ask you, you had the captaincy on Rashford. Any temptation for the triple captaincy? What would you say to people toying with the idea of using that chip?
I already burnt mine with Holland.
Mm-hmm. My bad.
Yeah, yeah. But if I had it, I would really consider it. Given the way Rashford's playing, it's not a bad selection. The triple captaincy chip isn't as important as the other two, so I wouldn't stress too much about it. But this seems to be a good option. I can't imagine a scenario where Rashford doesn't play at least 80 minutes in both games unless he gets hurt. So you're looking at confirmed minutes, great schedule,
red hot form,
not in a great form, and he's playing fantastically. It's really great to see. He's clearly a lovely human being, and to see him kind of regain his form has been pleasant. So if I had it, I would really consider it.
Cool, man. I mean, it's really interesting. Just the closing thoughts here in terms of money for next season. We've got Odegaard on screen right now, 6.9 million. We've mentioned Marcus Rashford, who's been down priced after 2 pretty poor seasons under Solskjaer to end at the Norwegian's time in managing United. But I got the feeling that those prices are going to be pretty different for next season when it rolls around.
Yeah, I hope so. I thought, I think there's a lot of commentary in social media that the prices this year were in general too cheap, and I agree. I'm hoping that Holland will be 14 or so, maybe even higher, and then you've got the Arsenal assets should shoot up.
Sure.
And then there'll be some tough decisions, right? You'll have to make some difficult choices, which I don't think a lot of people have had to do this year as much. Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why the template remains so strong. Yeah. So even though I'm 400,000, I'm actually something like 40 points from the top 100,000. Yeah. So it's still so tight because so many players are so highly owned, and I think that's a problem with the pricing. Spot on, man. I couldn't agree more. It's those. You want the harder decisions for people who are engaged with the FPL game and people who use all of the great tools we have at fantasyfootballfix.com. They're to make those tough calls
statistically based and grounded in a sense of reason. So that's what we want. We want tough calls next season, please, FPL Towers, and then the people can come over to us at Fix and find the answers to make those calls, right? Corey, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. Anything else that you wanted to say to the viewers before we wrap things up?
No, hopefully things improve. I think I had my second season, I think, was 100. Besides that, I don't think I've been above 30. So hopefully I don't have my second worst season ever.
Fingers crossed.
But long way to go.
Long way to go. Look, some amazing insights as always, mate. And I'm really looking forward to the next time we check in with you in a few weeks' time, see how things are going, and hopefully it'll be trending in the right direction. But guys, do please smash a like on the video on your way out. Do please comment in below as to Corey's season and his thoughts on this video. I've so enjoyed the conversation. And do please subscribe to fantasyfootballfix.com and to the fantasyfootballfix.com YouTube channel. We've got lots more content to come before Game Week 22 starts. I'll see you next week for another video. Have a very good week. Take care. Bye-bye.